All right, here we go. Welcome to Square Dance Callers Talking. Tonight, I've got somebody that I really wanted to talk to. I don't know where to start. He is a national caller. He is an international caller, owner of 2 record labels, I believe, but we're going to ask about that. One of the most sought after callers for parties, dances, and festivals, active member of CALLERLAB, on the board of governors of CALLERLAB, vice chair for music producers, vice chair of the executive committee. He's the chair-elect of the board, and he's accredited caller coach. Ted Lizotte, how are you, sir?
Oh, evidently I'm much better than I thought I was. Wow.
Did I leave anything out?
I don't know. Loving Libra, loving husband. I don't know idea. Whatever you got there.
Okay. I didn't know you were a Libra. Okay. I'll write that down for next time.
Okay, we'll get that.
So tonight, so we know each other a little bit. First of all, I've got my throwback T-shirt on.
Appreciate you representing.
You got the pen, absolutely. We'll talk about the record labels and everything, but we'll kind of stay on course a little bit to start off with. First of all, Ted Lizotte, tell me where you are now, where you started out, where you were born, that type. Just a little bit about Ted Lizotte.
Well, let me see. You've got me in my office. I work from home for an insurance company. I live in Manchester, New Hampshire. I've been in New Hampshire all my life, as long as I can remember. About 20 minutes south of here, and then moved up to the quote-unquote big city, the Queen City in New Hampshire, which is Manchester. It's got a little over 100,000 people. I don't know how big that is in comparison, but it's the biggest one we got.
Okay.
So just I've been here for forever. So just love it.
So square dancing for you, where did that start when you started taking lessons, basically?
Square dancing, as I tell everybody, Paul, Paul Cody, owner of Hilton Audio, him and I went to high school together, and we worked together at a bunch of different places out of high school and so forth. Lived together for a while with his sister, and rented a house and did some other stuff. So we've known each other forever. And he found square dancing through a parade. The parade went by, and some caller saw it. He saw it, and he just was like, I want to be that guy. And he went, and then he tricked me into going the following week. He took my girlfriend and me to dinner, took us out into the middle of Kittery, Maine, to, I forget what it was, a Masonic temple or something. And for whatever reason, I kind of knew when I was sitting in the parking lot, I'm like, I'm going to go square dancing. Why am I going square dancing? And I said, I don't want to go in there. And similar, I think, to you, I had the hair, right? I was Bon Jovi. I was Def Leppard. I was in all that. And I'm like, you want me to go in there? He's like, you can sit out here for an hour and a half till I'm done, or you can come in. So I went in, and I enjoyed the people. I enjoyed the puzzle. It was a nice and welcoming environment. And the next week, and he says, I'm going back. I'm like, sure, I'll go. So that's what we did.
So you start learning a little bit about square dancing and start dancing. At what point do you decide, hey, I'm going to try and go after this caller thing?
I'm going to blame Paul all for like the first 5-10 minutes of this thing. I did. I went, when I learned to dance, I ended up at 3 different clubs. I spent 3 months in one club in Kittery, Maine. I spent the next 3 months in Rochester, New Hampshire for a different caller, and the last 3 months at a singles club, because my girlfriend at that point in time had left. Of course, that's 35 years ago.
Right.
So I went a weird road to get there. Paul was really interested in calling. I was just having fun and getting a chance to hang out with my friend. Right. The clubs brought me close to my mom. I go by and visit mom once a week on my way to the club, and so that got me a chance to go home and visit. So that was nice. And then when he was putting everything together, he went out again, bought a couple of microphones, a couple of records, and then in his basement, he's like, here, let's try these things. So we were singing songs like idiots in there. And our first 2 we did a couple of amateur nights out in the middle of nowhere, New Hampshire, and all we were doing was singing calls. And then we called our first tip, if you want to call it that, at our graduation. We graduated from dancing and then picked up the microphone and called the Do Run Run, and the Devil Went Down to Georgia.
Very nice. You remember the song. That's awesome.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I sang them way too many times. Way too many times.
So how long all total you think you've been calling now? When was that roughly?
That was 88. So I count that because we got hired right there to do something else. We could harmonize. So
Mhm.
we sounded good. Couldn't call a lick, but
Right.
we could sing, right? So we got hired right then and there for like 6 or 8 months later, and then we had to start practicing to learn how to do things. So I count that as it. So it's been 35 years. Paul and I called together for until about 93, 94, and then he left to go to Georgia or somewhere down there, and I kind of had to pick up the mantle to take over by myself. So that's when
Okay.
I kind of did some things on my own.
All right. Well, so I know, I mean, I know all of this about you, but the main reason we're doing this is so other people who may or may not know you or just heard of you know a little bit. Where do you call and dance level wise?
I can fake C1 if I got a good square because I'm dancing.
Mhm.
I do call C1. I dance up through A2 pretty confidently. Um, I call through C1.
Mhm.
So those two ish kind of places.
And you've traveled around, called all over the United States and out of the United States. Tell me about some of that.
Well, I've been lucky enough as I guess as we got the kids left, I don't know, 5, 6 years ago or so, and just it's a typical caller story, right? It's always like the Fibonacci. It's that spiral. It just keeps
Mhm.
getting bigger. The further away you get, the more people somebody wants you to go a little further and then a little further. So that's kind of what happened, and it just kind of snowballed, and you don't really notice it until you look back and you go, "Wow, why the heck am I over here?" Um, so we were there and so I'm lost the original question. So what we
No,
got
I was
more.
just saying, where outside of the United States have you been calling? I know you just got back not long ago because I saw pictures on Facebook. I forget where you were, but you spent some time not long ago.
We've well, we were just in I just got back from San Diego, but a couple years ago, just before COVID, we were in Australia for a week and
Okay.
called two down there, which was nice.
Okay.
My first time overseas was in Germany. There was actually there's a video out there of the my Tech Squares group that's like top down from 2011,
Mhm.
and that keeps making the rounds because for whatever reason. And somebody saw that in Germany and hired me to go over and call his 50th birthday party. So that's what we did.
Very
And
nice.
now
Uh,
we've been all over since then. So not as many places as I'd like to go. So in case Japan and Sweden are watching, I'd like to get out there. But right now, I've been to Germany, Denmark, Czechoslovakia.
I was actually looking at some of my YouTube stuff, and I don't know who, but there are some Sweden viewers, so maybe that should
Well, there
get
you
out
go.
there.
Hey,
So hopefully you get that. No Japan yet, but maybe.
no, no, someday, maybe. You never know.
So you've been traveling around doing that. I ask everybody, and I know you've got to have a lot. But what funny story? What happened to you or a dancer? What jumps out at you? It's just a funny story you want to tell people.
I, I, I don't know. Funny. I look back, I guess. All right, the last thing that happened to me is a gentleman walked into a dance like last couple months ago from North Carolina, and when I first started calling, I was calling for a couple of teen clubs
Hmm.
in New Hampshire, and then slowly increased my stuff. But he brought me back the um, graduation that he took on one of those big camcorders. He videotaped it and he put it on a stick somehow, and he handed that to me. And so I played that for Shelly. It's got to be one of the first things, and I'm listening to myself and watching myself, and I'm like, oh my god, that was just horrible. But and so Shelly thought it was pretty funny, but
Oh, that's good. That's good.
yes, pretty nice.
Um, and I mean, you're definitely upper level caller for absolute sure. I mean, and so when you're getting ready for a dance, I mean, I know there's still preparation for you. I mean, I've talked to you quite often, and we've discussed calling in depth at times. But when you're getting ready for a dance somewhere you don't normally go, what do you do?
Well, I've got probably 3 or 4 songs, depending on where I am, that I really think are solid for me. Like I don't miss very often with them, vocal wise, depending on how I'm feeling and so forth. So the range is good. It's not too high. I'm not pushing myself. So I usually will start with a couple of those. I think they're a little showcasey, but not over the top, if you will. I'll save that for later on. And then I usually run through a little bit of everything. I try and hit everything, whatever level I'm calling the first set out. I try and hit like all the calls from some standard positions and see how everybody does. Does everybody kind of fall apart on certain ones, or things I should stay away from, or does it seem to be we're pretty cohesive and they're working right? And then I'll figure out which ones I want to kind of attack. My plan of attack usually over the course of the night, so that I don't get too repetitive with myself, is that I try to find either some small flow module that I think is a little different, or pick a call and just crank it up a notch or two, not too far, but something that maybe they could fall into but wouldn't necessarily hear all the time, and then focus my tip and singing call in that fashion. And then the next time I get up, I'll switch that to something else, and that way I'm not, because otherwise, if I'm not really focused, I could call the same thing all night long, just because you're not focusing. So that's kind of what I do, where I kind of sit most of the time.
That's part of, that's what I try to work on now. Is like when you say taking a call and just taking that one call and moving it up, doing different things with it. And I haven't reached that by any means yet. And so, but just to be more creative than just your standard, right and left through, veer left, Ferris wheel, that type of stuff. So of all that stuff, and this is just something I throw out there, and you probably have more than one. What's your favorite call when you're just out there, plus mainstream, advanced, whatever you like to call it, and just stand back and watch?
It changes. It changes. I like to see the dancers' faces usually when I pull something out that they kind of fall into and it works and they don't know why. So it doesn't matter really what it is. As far as dancing goes, I mean, I call a lot of Dixie style. I call a lot of wheel arounds. I like them. I think they flow well, but I'm more about the flow as the dance is going than any one particular call.
Okay.
So
I will say that until the last caller school when we were at TOTL, and you really talked a lot about Dixie style, and I rarely used it, and I realized how much you used it in your part of it, and so I might go overboard with it now, because I'm always send her back Dixie style, get rid of her Dixie style, some of the things you go with, and so that's really made an impression on me. Speaking of that, and we'll get into the caller schools in a minute. Well, what about your record labels? What are your record labels?
Well, I started out, again, we'll go back to Paul. Paul started a record label with Ego. And at some point in time, he was producing everything on his own. He was a one-man shop, and he asked me and offered me to join him. So we kind of went in as I was a silent, small little level partner. So I just kind of paid for everything, all of my stuff, and took care of it. And he kind of marketed it, and that allowed him to have more releases than he could probably afford on his own. So it was never my label, but I kind of just did that. And then he wanted to take a step back, and I had this stuff and a couple of things. I had started to get the bug, if you will. So in 2017, I decided to open my own, right? Bing. So I took the stuff. He was very gracious and basically just said, here, take your stuff back. You paid for it. It's yours. And I started with that and my new stuff, and then kind of re-released those and rebranded them under my own label, and then went from there. So started with Throwback, and we've been at it now, like 6 years at this point, 5-6 years. The TOTL label, Tony and I wanted to put together a school that was a little different. So it gives you the experience of going to Nashville. You've been there, so you know, right? You get there, you get a chance to see the musicians, see the music happening, see these incredible musicians put this stuff together, and then pick apart a singing call with Tony and I, like, because there's a difference between trying to do something in the studio and trying to do something on the dance floor, and what the song says and how it should say it, and really breaking it down and having you come back and really listen to the tune. I think a lot of us over time don't spend the time with those singing calls that we probably should, as much as we like to think we do. We don't. And so in that particular school, like, I don't know how many times you sang that thing between in front of everybody in the class and then on your own in the room or
Yeah.
everybody in the hallway. You know, it was just so many times, not just trying to hit the notes, but getting the rhythm. Does this wording work? Should I change the pattern to fit better here? And it was being our first one, I had a great time. I thought it was very engaging with everybody there and I was thrilled with it. The record label is just, you know, I came up with that, so don't let him tell you
No,
what
no,
to
no,
do.
okay, okay.
TOTL, total.
No, that's a great one. It really is. I enjoy it. I'm proud to be the the flagship, if
And
you want to
honorary
say, the
member.
first group
Yeah,
going
and
through that.
honorary member.
You would have never known that it was the first one that y'all put together. I mean, it was one of the best weeks I've had in calling, and that was part of being where we were in Nashville. The last day, Marcia and I went into Nashville, spent some time there, but just getting to spend time with all of y'all, and with Scott and Shauna also showing up, and just having y'all around, it was great. And just getting to talk to you, and yeah, and then when I talked to, I think it was Tony I was talking to, and he said, yeah, when we do this on my other label, we do it in one day. And I'm
Yep.
like, are you kidding me? And when I talked to Justin, and he said, yeah, we'll go down there and do the music, and then we go to lunch like at Subway. We come back and do it. And I thought, we spent a week, and I was in the lobby the half the time when everybody else is doing it, going over and over and over. And
Yep.
so that's amazing that y'all do that in a day sometimes. Um, the other thing too, I think, and I don't know if the right word is kindred spirit, but we have kind of the same taste. Your music that you put out, and I will tell you this: I started calling around 2013 ish, 2012, 2013. Started buying music probably 2014, and it was mostly records. And then some digital was coming in, and I didn't know about record labels. And then I don't know who I ran into first, whether it was Scott's label or yours in 2017. But when that music, and I was like, oh, he's doing AC/DC, he's doing Poison. And I just thought, these are all people I listened to and grew up. And it was such a step away from what the music was. And I love country. Don't get me wrong. I mean, George Strait, I did George Strait's Troubadour. I love country. But when it comes to 80s, 70s, 80s, 90s metal and pop, stuff like that, love all that. So I appreciate what you're doing with that for sure. Because that music, I'd have still been doing it, but it really got me excited. Whenever I hear something new of yours come out, I'm like, oh, I got to get that. And then start working on that. And then I realized, hey, you can't sing that song, Charlie. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah, I got a whole stack of those records someplace and songs that get sent to me, and I'm like, nope, nope, that ain't gonna work. I hear you. I mean, I'm a child of the 70s and 80s, right? So I'm in my mid 50s. Most of my high school music's in the 80 to 84 range, and
Mm-hmm.
that's heavy Ozzy, Metallica, AC/DC, Journey is in that particular space. I'm a big Journey fan. And Scott's more Southern rock, but we do cross over. There's a lot of things that when they were first starting, Scott's like, I'm doing that. I'm like, oh, I'm going to do this one. I was going to do that one. Oh, no, you're going to do that one. So we have a lot of the similar tastes. He just has a better range than I do. So I can't sing some of those things that he can pop out, which is great. I mean, he sounds fantastic. And then actually I switched to country in the 90s. So I'm still a big fan of Garth Brooks. I mean, I've seen him like
Yeah.
3-4 times in concert. George Strait, and that was the whole Alan Jackson, Randy Travis, Ronnie Millsap, all of that, those people I listened to for a good 5-10 years. And then I found Sirius Radio, and now I'm stuck back in the
Yeah.
70s and 80s, unless I really force myself to go somewhere else. I discovered the Beatles late in life, and I really thoroughly enjoy. I mean, I knew they were there, but I really started to listen to them a lot heavier. Big
My wife was a big Beatles fan, and so I never really paid much attention to them. And then as my son got older, she got him into it, and so just by osmosis, being in the car with them or whatever, I was
Sure.
like, this is pretty good. And so I went back and I've listened to a lot of their stuff. Same thing with Led Zeppelin. I wasn't the biggest Led Zeppelin fan in the world growing up. I was
Yeah.
I was a Metallica, Motley Crue, and all through the 80s. And then my wife, huge Led Zeppelin fan, and she got me into it. And now, if we're riding around, we're typically listening to Led Zeppelin. So We thought if we buy a boat, we're going to name it Ramble On.
There
So
you go.
it's just that type of thing. So you are an accredited CALLERLAB caller coach, yes?
Yeah, weird, right? Yeah.
No, you are a fine caller coach. So
Thanks.
just a little bit. I know it's a long process. Just give me somebody had asked me about that. Or I saw something on Facebook. Somebody was asking what it takes to do that. Just a little idea of going from I want to be a caller coach to getting there.
It's kind of like that whole spiral thing that we were talking about. Just start calling different spots. I can probably trace it back. I went to a convention, CALLERLAB convention in 2001, and Clark Baker asked me to talk about alternative music. At the time, we were still on records, but I was playing records, by Cher or Star Wars or something. I had a different selection than a lot of the other callers that he would run into, and he wanted me to do a presentation. So that's out there somewhere, and I'm like, oh, so I don't think anybody really. I can never understand why anybody wanted to hear from me. I'm like, okay, I just do what I do, and I'm just trying to get better at it every time. And so I did that, and then Ken Ratusi's probably the next one that deserves the props. He would invite me. There's a wonderful caller school down the street from me, about an hour, the Northeast Caller School. I can see the flyer behind over, or
That's the
brochure.
actual book. That's the
Yeah, it's
book
the
that's provided.
actual book. Ken is super with training callers everywhere, and he's so passionate about it. And he was kind enough to invite me down and just give a lecture on a topic. He would give me a topic. He said, well, usually most people start with music with me, and then they're like, I'd love to hear talk about music. And then it's just kind of evolved into a couple of different things, and I started being asked to do a little more, and then he asked me to stay a little more, and then Tony got on. He's like, oh, you're helping out over there, maybe you should come to GSI. And that's a little tougher. I mean, I still work for a living, so it's trying to figure out where I'm going to get all this time off to go do the things I got to do. And it just kind of snowballed one to the other. And I started the process at one point, and then I pulled back because it was just so just a lot of extra studying that needed to be done, putting together booklets, things to do, and life gets in the way. So I kind of shelved it. And then I decided to do it again, and Ken kind of kicked me in the butt and made me get going, and Tony was kicking me in the butt and saying, you got to do this. And all right, so I did. So we got it done, and yeah, it was right. And then COVID shut down. Like I got my accreditation in February,
Right.
and like a month and a half later in March something, everything shut down. So I'm like, oh, okay, well, guess the world is ending because Ted got its
Yeah.
accreditation. Yeah, watch out.
So you brought that on. Okay.
It was me. It was me. I'm sorry.
You are. I talked to Teresa Berger a few days back, and so she told us a lot about CallerLab. But you are extremely active in CallerLab. So I think I covered everything you're doing with them, with the executive committee and all that. Just tell me something about CallerLab. What you're doing with them and that type of thing.
That can go back a ways. Some of it is just luck, really, right? So I'm a member of what's called the Tri-State College Association, which is basically our local association up here in New Hampshire. And when you look at the membership of that association, when I walked in the door, though, I wouldn't have known at the time. Sitting around the table is Don Beck, is Clark Baker, is Jim Mayo, the first chairman. And so they were always very passionate about CallerLab. And again, I'm a kid, mid-20s or whatever, and I don't quite get the whole thing. I'm like, I need a license. But I'm listening to these guys talk, and eventually, once I got through the kid phase and I could afford to go, I started going. And then I have the sheet of paper in my closet. I sat down and I saw them passing around, because normally what happens at a convention, if you decide to run, Charlie, you would get your name and you go around and get 25 signatures of people that would support you.
Okay.
And but you're not supposed to get your own. Somebody's supposed to get yours.
Okay.
So you would, but I was sitting there and I saw some people that they were getting signatures for, and I half-handedly said, really? They're running? I mean, if they could run, I could run. And Jim was near me, and Jim got up, walked away, came back and said, sign this. And I'm like, okay, because you don't say no to Jim. So you sign it. And then he went away. And 15 minutes later, he came back with a sheet of signatures that said, you're in. Now you gotta get elected. But at a very early time, Jim had a number of conversations. My first college school was at Jim's house. My second college school was with Jim and Tony. And he pulled me aside and he's like, you do very well at the calling. You do this, you do that, and you need to step up and you need to take a leadership role as things begin to evolve for you. And that sat with me a long time. So I did.
Outstanding.
Now look what he's done to me.
I know.
Gosh, sweet mother.
So, where was I going to go with the
I
call?
don't know. You got the list, man. I'm just sitting here.
What I was going to say is with CallerLab, it provides us with insurance and the license and everything like that. And you also do the vice chair for the music producers. Now, obviously, those of us that don't have record labels or anything like that, what does that involve with music producers?
Well, the music producers is a kind of side thing with CallerLab. It was kind of obvious that as the activity shrinks and people try to put out new music, it's not beneficial to anybody if we all pick a song, right? Like whatever the new hit song is, doesn't matter. Right. So there's a new Justin Timberlake. I have no idea. Like, I'm so not up on whatever's good right now. But there's a new song some way, and everybody decides to try to do it. Well, if we all do it, everybody sells one copy of it and we all lose a bunch of money, and eventually we all close shop, and that's not really helping out the activity. So that goes back to Wade Driver, I believe. So if you ever talk to Shauna, she can confirm, because Shauna's better at this than me. But I believe it was Wade Driver who set up one of the first gentleman's agreements. So all the music producers basically agreed to put together a website that they control, basically a database that you can go in and sign up for one. So like if I hear a song and I want to basically stake my name to it and put a pin in it, I go to the database and I put the song in, and provided nobody else has it, then it's mine for a certain amount of time. And that means nobody will release the song. Nobody will re-release the song if that has been done before. Nobody will go ahead and try to do it. And that gives me time to then get a license, go through the process of getting the studio done and getting the music put together and cutting it and all that other stuff. So it's a way that allows everybody to kind of so that the whole activity continues to get new music without really burying the small guy somewhere along the line, because I can't keep up with Rhythm or Royal that are putting out songs every time they turn around. But they may be doing that, but they're not putting out the songs that I've already said I'm going to take care of, whether they want to or not. So it's really a unique environment.
Now, I had talked to when I talked to Scott Bennett about some of his record label stuff, and I asked him this, but what's your process from you hear a song or you decide, where do you go from, hey, that sounds like a good song, to going to record it? What's your process for that?
I wish I had a good one. It comes in spurts. I'm really good with Shazam. So if I'm somewhere, I'll listen to stuff. I have a bunch of stuff that's on the shelf that I get done, and then I release it slowly, and then I'll get into I got to start finding stuff. I tend to roam around on Sirius XM because I drive. I mean, we all drive a lot as callers, right? So provided I'm by myself, I'll try to listen to stations that I don't normally listen to. So I listen to like 70s, 80s. I'm not but there's a station for every decade, including the one that we're in. And I'll go up and down that dial and just kind of listen. Before I had that, I used to hit scan and seek on the FM radio and see where it stopped, and I'd play whatever's playing. But I don't know. It's song, usually if it fits the rhythm and I find it's gonna be there, I write it down, and then I'll go back and revisit it later, and I'll try to cut it up. You count it out, is it going to fit without a big problem, and then when it does, how do I fix it? So it's really hard to say. It's easier for me to find pattern tunes because I hear patter tunes and I work with patter tunes that are regular songs anyways. You know, I'll call to Shares I Believe. I'll call to September by Earth, Wind and Fire. I don't need a patter tune that sounds like it or a karaoke. So if I find one that I can call to, then I will probably make that into a patter eventually. Because there's people like, I don't know if you do, but I know Tony doesn't like, for example, words. He likes to have a patter song.
Right.
So he doesn't like the karaoke. That's not as full. So he will, even if he loves the song I'm doing for whatever reason, he's gonna hopefully get a patter tune to it. Call it that, which I get. You know, everybody's got their thing. It's fine.
Now, I may be wrong, and correct me if I am, obviously, but you have Legs as a patter song now.
I
Is that
do, and
correct?
I've
Yeah.
used Legs
Now,
forever.
now, didn't it seems like 2 years ago or so, at one of the conventions, I heard you do patter to Legs, but it was the actual version with the singing behind it. Did you do that,
Yeah,
or
I
am I just
do.
making
Yeah,
that
I
up in my
use.
head?
Yeah, for those that don't know, that's ZZ Top. It's
Yeah,
from
ZZ Top.
Legs.
Okay.
You can look it up. Yeah, it's an awesome tune. So yeah, I've been using that for forever. You know, I use. There's a lot of them that I continually go back to and use. But I turn some of the ones that I use the actual song into
Okay.
patter stuff for again, like my first one I released was Peg, Steely Dan, and I used
Okay.
to use that tune all the time, and I still do. The words in the background do not bother me. The way I've learned to call around them, I think they enhance my performance. So it does, I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. But Tony used it when he got it, when I actually put it in a
Well,
song and released Peg, and he's like, "That's one of my favorite ones that you've done ever." And yeah, it sold really well. A lot of people like that one.
yeah, no, I have Peg is phenomenal. Uh, and I couldn't remember. I was thinking about the last couple of days, and I was like, I know he did Legs with the words with ZZ Top, and but then I knew you had the patter song too, and I was like, man, am I just making that up in my head? So you did do that prior to.
I,
I'll
there's a
tell
lot of
you another.
crossover. There's a lot
Okay.
of crossover between what I do and what you hear on the patter tunes. Yeah.
One of my favorite ones, and I will tell you, it's one of those songs, and a lot of people say, when you put a patter song on and you step back a second and you see the people already starting to dance before you start doing anything, you've got something pretty good. That Jailhouse Jump, I don't know who put that out, but that
Yes.
was kind of that way when it first came out. I mean, you put it in and people are dancing before you said a word. You put out Billie Eilish's Bad Guy
Yeah.
as a patter song. And the moment I heard it, I was like, I got to get online and grab this immediately. And because it is such a good song, and I've played it, I don't know how many times at dances, and I will have the one dancer that is actually up to date on music. They'll come up and they're like, "That is that Billie Eilish?" I was like, "Yes, it is. It's actually Ted Lizotte." But yeah, and so, but it is just, it's a great tune. Everybody should go out and get that for their patter,
Thank you.
because it's unlike most of the stuff out there. And
Yep. Check the
Legs and
page
all
out.
that is great. I enjoy all that. So we got the funny story out of the way, that type of thing. Um, and I've talked to a few people in the last few weeks, and I've talked about the Reno Caller Lab coming up.
Yep.
So we won't get too deep into that unless you have something. Is there something you want to tell me about Caller Lab?
You know, other than come Wednesday morning, I take over, which is frightening beyond belief for them as well as me, I'm
That's
sure.
right. Yep. Yep.
No, it's I mean, if you've never been to a convention, it's an experience. I mean, you get a chance besides this to sit there. I know the very first one I went to, I'm just poking at people, right? All these people I've seen on the records, so but to get a chance to sit there and talk to them and do everything is pretty good. It's pretty insightful, and well as all of the different things that go on. It's really the thing that brought it all together. You wouldn't be doing what you're doing today and have the ability to do it if that organization didn't find a way to hold everybody together. Because it doesn't sell franchises, baby. It can't enforce anything. It's not what it does. It is the sheer willpower of the people and the callers that come in that care to try to keep this an international, worldwide activity that continue to try to better it to the best of our ability. You really got to go. You don't understand it if you haven't been there.
And I tell people that, and other callers and dancers too, just for the sheer enjoyment of the nighttime dances that get put together.
Oh yeah, those are good.
Um, and I was the same way, as I guess your first couple before you got so involved with it. But the you know, just to being starstruck, you know, at the time I'd see people that I had a record that I'd purchased. I told Scott that he was sitting in there at a table doing something I forget, and he was one of the first names I knew, like record label wise. And I was like, man, that's Scott Bennett sitting there, you know, and I was just blown away. And same when I first met you, because you had all this stuff that I've been listening to, and I was like, wow, this guy's putting this music out, you know. So we had something in common there just from what you were putting out. Um, you also, there's a cruise coming up next year. That's a large cruise, and we're Marcia and I already booked for that, and we're looking forward to that. What
Yeah.
and but besides the cruise, I mean, what other kind of stuff do you have going on? You've got Tech Squares, real quick, or take all the time you want, actually. Tell me about Tech Squares. That's a pretty famous club these days.
You know, it blew my mind when I used to go and dance to them. You'd see them at conventions, and they were such great and smooth dancers back as long as I can remember. Um, you know, you can go to I will say you can go to Tech Square if you Google
Mm-hmm.
Tech Squares Square Dance and go to their homepage. There is
Right.
a wonderful 30-minute documentary towards the bottom that was made about how Tech Squares does thing. It's a pretty good thing you can watch over lunch. Um, and it gives you the idea. It's a weird animal in and of itself. The crash course has been there since the 70s. I am the third caller in its 55-year reign that's been
Wow.
up there running. Local caller Dennis Marsh got him started in the 70s, somewhere in there. Don Beck took over and called for 12 years, and when he retired, they put me in place. They shouldn't have hired me. I always say, you go, I'll say that on the video that's in the thing. I was not good enough to take that club when they gave it to me. But the lady that hired me thought that something would come of it. So there I was. I took it after, and I turned him down the first time. So the second time I took it. The but they are so I've been there now 25 years. I started in 97, I think. So I've been there 25 years. So some of those dancers have danced my class crash course 40 times because there's a local population that stays put, right? The students come in, the students leave, the students come in, they leave. But there's that local group of people that either join and then come in as students and then hang in the area, or that they just come in there and stay for whatever reason.
Okay.
And they have heard I mean, my jokes are, I try to be fresh, but I mean, come on, 50 times is crazy. A lot of callers, if you teach one class a year, you might teach 50 classes in your lifetime if if you manage to call for 50 years. And I've taught them 50 classes, not including all the other places I've called. So it's a unique experience. But a lot of those dancers go on to advanced and challenge. I don't know how many C4 dancers I've got on the floor at any given time, and doctors and so forth, but it's changed or influence the way I call in order to make sure that I'm not detrimental to their ability to move forward. So, for example, I heard people when I first learned, when I first was learning, somebody taught the center's part of Load the Boat at a dance, and the guy taught it as STP, slide through or star through,
Mhm.
grade, and pass through. And I'm like, okay, well, that and he got the entire floor to do it, right? Star through, pass it, and he got exactly what he wanted. However, you couldn't put four boys in the middle, you couldn't put four girls in the middle, you couldn't be sashayed in the middle. So I mean, it limited what they could do. So the way I speak, the way I teach, the way I put things together purposely tries to make sure that I don't hinder and force my dancers to be retaught someplace else. I worry about that a lot. And if I'm saying something incorrect, I try to fix it. So I'm very big on centers and ends and so forth and things like that. Just to be better, to be better. I don't want to be the cause of somebody having to reteach a dancer that I taught. So, and that's their fault. That's their fault.
Well, you certainly have a passion for it, and we all appreciate it. We really do, callers and the dancers also. What's your social media? Tell me a little bit about that if people want to find you, that type of stuff.
You want my social security number? That doesn't seem very productive for this.
Just the last four will be fine.
Oh yeah, just the last four. That'll take care of it. I mean, I'm not a big presence out there. I mean, I probably should be more betterer, as it were, as at what I do. I mean, I run 3 Facebook pages. So I run Throwback Tunes. You can go to Facebook and find Throwback Tunes. You can find Total Productions, and you can find Ted Lizotte Square Dance Caller. So, but even then, I don't put as much stuff out there as I probably should. Some of these guys run stuff through their individual Facebook page, and I don't do a lot there because I've got a lot of friends outside of the activity. That I just don't feel like filling up their feed with, hey, Ted's calling again. So I don't do a lot of that, but I, again, probably should. You can find me online. I run my own website at, tedlizotte.com, and Throwback Tunes, both are kind of link.com. So those things keep me busy. I don't twit. I don't
no Twitter.
I don't do the Snap
No,
thing.
no Instagram. None of that.
No Instas. No,
no TikTok for Ted.
No, I'm not TikToking for Ted. No, I don't do any TED Talks. Any TED TikToks.
No, well, it's right there for TED Talks. Come on.
You're right, it is.
So,
I mean, I've been accused of giving some TED Talks. Don't get me wrong, but I'm not. It's just between the full-time gig, running those 5 things, the music, and being as involved as I am in CALLERLAB right now, I'm surprised I even see my wife. So she's a saint to have to put up with me.
Well, I will say, you told me you could only do this on a Thursday, and so you are very busy. I will give you that. And now, your first solo caller school, it should be called TED Talks, and I'll give you that. That's from me to you.
So, hand that over?
Yeah, that's you. You can have TED Talks.
Right now? Yeah. Okay, TED Talks.
You can have TED Talks for your first caller school.
Boom. All right.
All right. Anything else you want to put out there, Ted?
No, I mean, I don't think so. I'm always interested in talking to people. So, the students and everything, you can always reach me by email. I will get back to people when I can. I've had really odd questions come across the thing, and then I try to engage with everybody that I can. It's just, generally speaking, we're busy. Somehow, I don't know what happened. Somehow along the way, I got very passionate about this activity. For the longest time, I tried to be the guy that when they asked me what I did and I said I was a square dance caller, they would say, you don't look like a square dance caller. And I would say, good, because I don't want to look like a square dance caller. I still don't. I think it's got an image, and I would prefer to be a guy that you go, really? Yeah, really, because I'm not what you think it is. And I think hopefully that brings people to the table. So, but regardless of not trying to look like it, I somehow found myself waist deep in everything that's going on. And I'm not unhappy about it. As I continue to age and get towards retirement and everything, there was worse ways I could have spent this life than I think what I ended up doing. Absolutely. And so I'm pretty happy with the way it worked out.
Yeah, when I first started, obviously I'm from South Georgia, or if you want to call it that, Savannah, Georgia. And when I first started calling, I wore a cowboy hat. And my wife, and I don't wear a cowboy hat outside of square dance calling, and my wife would constantly tell me, she's like, you look short enough. You don't need that giant hat. And so, it took a couple of those, and then finally it's actually hanging on my bedroom wall. I haven't worn it in 10 years.
It's a good ornament.
It is.
I got hanging all over the place. Yeah, that'll be better.
So I put the cowboy hat away, and I realize it now because wearing a cowboy hat doing patter to bad guy would kind of wouldn't coincide. So, So you can thank my wife one day for me not looking like an idiot up there with a cowboy hat doing bad guy patter.
You can thank your wife for that because she saved you. That's what it is.
All right, Ted, we'll go ahead and wrap it up, brother. Like I tell most of the people I've talked to, because they're mostly CALLERLAB for the most part, I will see you in a couple of weeks in Reno. Looking forward to that. Want to thank everybody for listening. I hope you enjoyed hearing from Ted. And that's Ted Lizotte. If you get a chance, YouTube, Spotify, comes out on Fridays. Like, subscribe, all that business. And I want to thank everybody. Ted, again, thank you, brother.
Anytime, sir. Glad
Yes,
nice to
sir.
talk to you.
Great talking to you.
Good night.